He had no romantic illusions, no fairy tales, no wishful thinking. Niccolò Machiavelli, the man who taught kings how to rule and enemies how to fear, left behind one truth so raw, so uncomfortable that most men will never dare to accept it. What if everything you were told about what women want was wrong? What if the answer was hidden in a 500-year-old manuscript written by the most ruthless political mind in history? Stay with me, because what you're about to hear could change how you see every relationship you've ever had. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is where we explore the deep psychology behind human behavior, the kind of truths that are rarely spoken out loud. Today's topic sits at the intersection of philosophy, evolutionary psychology, and the cold, unfiltered writings of Niccolò Machiavelli. We're going to unpack what Machiavelli actually believed about female nature, why modern psychology quietly agrees with him, and most importantly, what this means for you as a man navigating relationships, attraction, and influence in the modern world. This is not about hating women. This is not about manipulation. This is about understanding, because you cannot change what you refuse to acknowledge. Let's begin. Part 1. Who was Machiavelli, and why should you trust him? Most people know Machiavelli from one book, The Prince. Written in 1513, it was a brutal, honest guide to political power. Machiavelli didn't write what people wanted to hear. He wrote what actually worked. He watched rulers rise and fall, studied human nature the way a surgeon studies a body, without sentiment, without bias, without the comfort of illusion. And here's what made Machiavelli different from every self-help writer, every relationship coach, and every philosopher before him. He didn't ask, what should people be? He asked, what are people actually? That distinction is everything. Because most men walk into relationships with a version of a woman that exists only in their minds. They project loyalty, consistency, deep emotional commitment, and then they're blindsided when reality doesn't match the fantasy. Machiavelli would look at that man and say, "You failed before you even began. You never studied your terrain." He believed that misunderstanding human nature, and specifically female nature, was one of the greatest strategic errors a man could make. So, what did he actually believe? Let's go deeper. Part 2. Machiavelli's core observation, the nature of desire. Machiavelli made a foundational observation about human beings. People are drawn to strength. People are repelled by weakness. This wasn't a moral judgment. It was simply an observation, like gravity. You don't have to like it. It's still true. He wrote in The Prince, "Men are so simple and so subject to present necessities, that he who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow himself to be deceived." Now apply this to attraction. What Machiavelli understood, centuries before evolutionary psychologists coined the term hypergamy, is that women are instinctively drawn to men who project power, certainty, and status. Not because women are shallow, but because at a deeply biological level, these traits signal the ability to protect, provide, and lead. Here is the brutal part men don't want to hear. A woman's attraction is not primarily driven by how much you love her. It's driven by how much she respects you. Love without respect is not attraction. It is pity, and pity does not sustain desire. Machiavelli saw this play out in the courts of kings and nobles constantly. The ruler who begged for loyalty received contempt. The ruler who commanded respect received devotion, sometimes even from people who feared him. This is what he called the difference between being loved and being feared. And he argued that it is far safer to be feared than loved, because love is conditional. But respect is structural. It's built on how you carry yourself every single day. Now modern psychology backs this up in ways that would have made Machiavelli smile. Part 3. What modern psychology confirms. Dr. David Buss, an evolutionary psychologist at the University of Texas, conducted one of the largest studies on human mate preference, spanning 37 cultures across 6 continents. His findings were clear. Women across all cultures consistently prioritize resource acquisition, ambition, and social dominance in a partner. These aren't learned preferences. They are deeply wired. This doesn't mean women are gold diggers. It means that the female brain evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to seek out men who could lead, protect, and provide, because that's what ensured the survival of offspring. And here's where Machiavelli's insight becomes frighteningly precise. He understood that how a man presents himself matters more than what he actually feels. Think about that. A man can be deeply in love, committed, loyal, emotionally available. But if he presents himself as needy, uncertain, or desperate for validation, that love becomes invisible. The woman's subconscious simply cannot override the signal of weakness, no matter how hard she tries. Machiavelli called this the appearance of virtue being more important than virtue itself in political life. In relationship dynamics, the parallel is the appearance of strength matters more than inner turmoil you're hiding. A man who is struggling but composed is infinitely more attractive than a man who is thriving but anxious for approval. Composure, frame, self-possession. These were Machiavellian principles, and they are magnetic. Part 4. The story of the prince and the peasant. Let me tell you a story, a fictional one, but built on truths Machiavelli would recognize instantly. There were two men in a small village in Renaissance Italy. One was a prince, not particularly handsome, not particularly kind. But he walked with certainty. He made decisions without flinching. When he entered a room, people turned. The other was a peasant, warm, generous, deeply in love with the same woman. He brought her flowers. He wrote her letters. He told her every night how much he needed her. And here is what happened. The woman, intelligent, warm-hearted, not cruel, chose the prince. Not because she didn't see the peasant's love. She did. But love, when it comes from a place of need, feels like a weight rather than a gift. The peasant's devotion said, "I am incomplete without you." The prince's attention said, "I have chosen you, and I could choose differently." Machiavelli would say, the peasant made the error of revealing his hand before the game even began. The prince never begged for a place in her life. He simply occupied space with such confidence that she moved toward him naturally. This is the Machiavellian truth most men spend decades learning the hard way. Part 5. The balance. Machiavelli doesn't mean cruelty. Now, here is where most people misread Machiavelli, and it's critical. Machiavelli was not advocating cruelty. He was not saying, be cold, be distant, don't love. He was saying, never let your need for someone else become the foundation of your identity. There is a profound difference between a man who chooses to love deeply and a man who cannot survive without the object of that love. One is strength. The other is dependency. And dependency, no matter how beautifully wrapped in romance, ultimately erodes attraction. The Machiavellian man loves, but he also has a mission, a direction, a life that would continue powerfully with or without any particular person in it. That quality, that wholeness, is what creates lasting attraction. Because a woman does not want to be your entire world. She wants to be a chosen part of a world that is already rich, purposeful, and moving. When you have that, you stop chasing. And when you stop chasing, people follow. Part 6. Practical takeaways. What to do with this? So what does all of this mean practically? Here are the core principles to internalize. 1. Build your life first. Your career, your health, your purpose. Not to impress anyone, but because a man with direction is intrinsically more compelling than a man waiting for someone to give his life meaning. To master your emotional frame, you are allowed to feel everything. But composure is the filter through which those feelings are expressed. Panic privately. Present calmly. 3. Stop seeking validation from the person you're attracted to. Validation seeking telegraphs insecurity. Ask less, pursue more, give space. Let attraction breathe. For understand that consistency breeds trust. Machiavelli knew that the ruler who was predictably strong was more trusted than one who is sometimes brilliant and sometimes weak. In relationships, be the man who shows up the same, grounded, every time. 5. Never make someone your only option. Not out of manipulation, but because a man with options, socially, professionally, personally, carries himself differently. And that difference is felt. Machiavelli wrote for kings. But his truths belong to every man willing to face reality without flinching. The only thing women want at the deepest, most primal level is a man who doesn't need their approval to feel whole. A man who is already complete. A man who leads himself before he tries to lead anyone else. That's not manipulation. That's mastery. And mastery in any domain is the most attractive thing a human being can possess. If this video made you think differently, hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new. We go deep on psychology, philosophy, and human nature every week. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. Until next time, build yourself. The rest will follow.